They sold out stadiums from coast to coast. They spoke at the United Nations. They shook hands with the President of the United States inside the White House. BTS didn't just break into America, they conquered it. But here's the thing no one talks about loud enough. With that level of fame, with that insane spotlight burning 24/7 on American soil, not every moment was a standing ovation. Some moments? They were pure chaos. We're talking headlines that made armies lose sleep, controversies that trended worldwide before breakfast, and scandals that had American media outlets fighting over who could publish first. Now, let me ask you this. Which BTS member do you think has the most scandals tied to America? Is it the one who always trends for the wrong reasons at the worst possible time? Or is it the quiet one you'd never suspect? What if I told you the member sitting at number 1 literally left the entire ARMY fandom divided, not once, not twice, but multiple times? And what if the member you think is totally clean actually isn't? Here's the rule: 7 members, 7 spots. No ties. No shared rankings. From the member with the least American scandal baggage all the way down to the one who practically had American tabloids on speed dial. Buckle up, ARMY. This list is about to rearrange everything you thought you knew. Let's start the countdown. Number 7. Jimin. The untouchable prince who almost had 0 scandals until Wall Street noticed. Alright, ARMY, we're kicking off this countdown at number 7, and honestly, if there was ever a BTS member you'd bet your entire photo card collection on being completely scandal-free in America, it would be this man right here. Kim Seokjin. The eldest. The worldwide handsome. The guy who literally turned a red carpet moment into a global meme just by existing. And look, for the longest time, Jimin was basically Teflon in the American entertainment landscape. Nothing stuck. Nothing trended negatively. Nothing even came close to a controversy. While other K-pop idols were getting dragged left and right on American social media, Jimin was out there blowing kisses at the Billboard Music Awards, cracking dad jokes in English that somehow made American journalists fall in love with him, and casually becoming the third one from the left, a viral moment from the 2017 VMAs that introduced him to millions of Americans who had never even heard of BTS before. Let's talk about that moment for a second, because it's important context. May 2017, BTS attends the Billboard Music Awards for the first time. They win Top Social Artist, and the American internet collectively loses its mind trying to figure out who these 7 guys are. And out of all 7, the one who broke the American internet that night wasn't the leader, wasn't the main vocalist, wasn't even the one who gave the speech. It was Jimin. Standing there, third from the left, visuals so unreal that Twitter literally crashed trying to figure out his name. News, Entertainment Tonight, Billboard itself, they all ran stories trying to identify the handsome one. That moment alone should tell you something about Jin's relationship with American media. It was always positive, always warm, always wholesome. He wasn't the type to show up on TMZ. He wasn't the type to get caught in paparazzi drama at LAX. He was the type to trend because he was eating a snack during an award show, or because he wore a cute hat, or because he called himself handsome for the 700th time and somehow it was still charming. American armies loved him for that. He was safe. He was comfort. He was the BTS member your mom would approve of without hesitation. So when a scandal did eventually surface that reached American shores, it caught people completely off guard. Let's rewind to September 2020. Big Hit Entertainment, the company behind BTS, was gearing up for one of the most anticipated IPOs in South Korean history. We're talking a company valued at billions, with BTS as its crown jewel. The stock listing was massive, it made international financial news, and American outlets like Bloomberg, CNBC, Forbes, and the Wall Street Journal were all over it. This wasn't just K-pop news anymore. This was Wall Street news. And right in the middle of all that financial frenzy, a detail emerged that made headlines on both sides of the Pacific. All 7 BTS members, including Jimin, had been given shares of Big Hit Entertainment before the IPO. We're talking 68,385 shares each, gifted by the company's founder Bang Si-hyuk. At the IPO price, Each member's shares were worth roughly 7.7 billion Korean won. That's about 6.4 million US dollars. Now, here's where things got tricky and where American media latched on. The question everyone started asking was simple but loaded. Did BTS members, including Jin, benefit from insider knowledge? Did they know the stock was going to skyrocket? Was this a case of insider trading wrapped in a K-pop bow? American financial journalists, particularly from outlets like Forbes and Business Insider, ran analytical pieces exploring the ethics of idol-owned shares in entertainment IPOs. The narrative was no longer about cute boys singing and dancing. It was about money, power, corporate structure, and financial regulation. For Jin specifically, this was jarring because he had literally never been associated with anything even remotely controversial in the American press. And suddenly, his name was appearing in articles next to phrases like insider trading allegations and stock manipulation concerns. The South Korean Financial Supervisory Service launched an investigation, and for months, the cloud hung over all 7 members. American armies were split. Some defended the members fiercely, arguing they were simply given shares as employees and had no say in the timing, while others acknowledged that the optics weren't great, especially for a group that had built their brand on authenticity and humility. Ultimately, the investigation cleared all 7 members. There was no wrongdoing. The shares were a legitimate form of compensation, and the members had followed all legal protocols. But the damage to the narrative, at least temporarily, was done. For a brief window, Jin's name had appeared in American financial scandal coverage, and that was something no one ever expected. Beyond the stock controversy, Jin's American scandal sheet is remarkably thin. There were minor moments, a time when he was spotted looking visibly exhausted at an American event and fans accused the company of overworking him, sparking a welfare debate on American fan forums. There was the brief buzz when his solo single, The Astronaut, a collaboration with Coldplay released in October 2022, was critiqued by some American music reviewers who felt the song was too safe for a market that rewarded boldness. But that's a critique, not a scandal. And there was his military enlistment in December 2022, which American media covered extensively, not as a scandal, but as a cultural event, with outlets like CNN, The New York Times, and NPR all running pieces about the significance of a global superstar pausing his career for mandatory service. In every instance, Jin emerged with his reputation not just intact but reinforced. He is, by virtually every metric, the BTS member who navigated the treacherous waters of American fame with the least amount of baggage. The stock controversy was the one and only time his name appeared anywhere near the word scandal in American media, and even that was resolved cleanly. So yeah, number 7 goes to the man who proved that you can be one of the biggest pop stars on the planet and still keep your record almost spotless in the most unforgiving media landscape on Earth. But don't get too comfortable, ARMY, because the member sitting at number 6? They had a moment in America that was way harder to shake off, and it involved a stage that millions of people were watching live. Stay right here. Number 6. Suga. The genius producer who sampled America's darkest tragedy and paid the price. Now we step into territory that gets a little heavier, a little more uncomfortable, and, honestly, a little more fascinating from a storytelling perspective. Number 6 belongs to Min Youngie, or as the world knows him, Suga. Or if you're a day one fan of his solo work, Auguste. And look, let's establish something right at the top before we dive deep. Suga is widely considered the intellectual backbone of BTS. The man who writes lyrics that cut like scalpels. The producer who can turn a beat into an emotional experience. The guy who openly discussed depression, anxiety, social phobia, and suicidal thoughts in his music years before it became trendy for male idols to talk about mental health. In America, Suga was respected, not just by armies, but by the music industry itself. Producers, rappers, critics, they all acknowledged that this man from Daegu had something different. Something raw. Something real. His Auguste mixtapes weren't just K-pop side projects, they were legitimate hip-hop statements that American rap blogs and music publications reviewed seriously. So when Suga's name landed in the middle of a genuine American controversy, it wasn't because of some tabloid nonsense or dating rumor. It was because of something far more serious, something that touched one of the most painful chapters in American history. And that changed the conversation completely. Let's go back to August 15th, 2016. Suga drops his first mixtape under the alias August D. It's free. It's raw. It's aggressive. And it's absolutely brilliant. Tracks like August D, Give It To Me, and The Last immediately cement Youngie as one of the most talented rapper producers in K-pop history. American hip-hop communities take notice. SoundCloud streams explode. Music Twitter is buzzing. Everything is going perfectly until people start listening more carefully to a track called What Do You Think? And that's when the floor drops out. Buried in the production of What Do You Think is an audio sample, a voice, a sermon. And not just any sermon, it's the voice of Jim Jones. Now, if you're not American or if you're too young to know this history, let me paint the picture for you because context is everything here. Jim Jones was the founder of the People's Temple, a cult that operated primarily in California during the 1970s. He presented himself as a progressive religious leader, attracted thousands of followers, many of them Black Americans seeking community and social justice, and eventually relocated nearly 1,000 of them to a remote compound in Guyana, South America, called Jonestown. On November 18, 1978, after a U.S. congressman named Leo Ryan visited the compound to investigate abuse allegations and was murdered on an airstrip while trying to leave, Jim Jones ordered the mass suicide of his entire congregation. Over 909 people died that day. Men, women, children. Over 300 of the dead were children who were forced to drink cyanide-laced punch by their own parents under Jones' command. It remains the single largest deliberate loss of American civilian life in history until September 11, 2001. The phrase, drinking the Kool-Aid, which Americans use casually to this day, comes directly from this massacre. This is not ancient history for Americans. Survivors are still alive. Families still mourn. Documentaries are still being made. The trauma is generational and deeply embedded in American cultural memory, particularly within Black American communities who lost entire families to Jones manipulation. So when American armies, many of whom were Black, many of whom had personal or familial connections to this tragedy, discovered that Suga had sampled Jim Jones' actual voice in a BTS-related release, the reaction was immediate, visceral, and devastating. Twitter erupted. Fan forums imploded. Threads with thousands of replies appeared within hours. The criticism wasn't petty or exaggerated. It was deeply personal. People were writing paragraphs about how their grandparents knew Jonestown victims, how they grew up hearing stories about children being poisoned, how hearing that voice sampled casually in a hip-hop track felt like a punch to the stomach. And here's what made this controversy specifically an American scandal. It wasn't a big deal in South Korea. Most Korean listeners didn't recognize the sample. They didn't have the cultural context. They didn't carry the historical weight. But in America, it was a 5-alarm fire. American music journalists picked it up. Blogs that covered BTS favorably were now writing critical pieces. The question everyone was asking was brutal in its simplicity. Did Suga know? Did he know who Jim Jones was? Did he understand the gravity of what he sampled? Or did he just hear an interesting audio clip and use it without researching its origin? Big Hit Entertainment responded relatively quickly. The sample was removed from the track. The song was re-uploaded without Jim Jones' voice. And an apology was issued, acknowledging that the sample was used without full awareness of its historical significance and expressing regret for the pain it caused. Suga himself didn't make a lengthy public statement about it at the time, which frustrated some American fans who wanted a personal acknowledgement, not just a corporate one. The ARMY fandom, as it often does, split down the middle. One side argued that Suga genuinely didn't know, that sampling controversial audio is common in hip-hop, that American producers have sampled far worse without backlash, and that the apology and removal were sufficient. The other side argued that ignorance isn't an excuse when you're operating at a global level, that using the voice of a man responsible for the murder of over 900 people, including hundreds of children, is indefensible regardless of intent, and that the fandom's instinct to immediately protect rather than hold accountable was itself problematic. The truth, as always, probably sits somewhere in the messy middle. Suga was a 23-year-old producer from Daegu, South Korea, who almost certainly did not have the American historical education to understand what that sample represented. Hip-hop production culture regularly involves sampling speeches, sermons, and controversial audio. It's part of the genre's DNA. But the impact was real. The hurt was real. And the lesson was costly. Now, fast forward to August 2022, and Suga's name hits American headlines again, but this time for something completely different. Youngie was caught riding an electric scooter while intoxicated in Seoul's Hanam-dong neighborhood. He fell off the scooter, was found by police, tested above the legal blood alcohol limit, and had his license revoked. He issued a personal apology almost immediately, and Big Hit confirmed the incident. American outlets, Billboard, Rolling Stone, TMZ, and Me, all covered it. TMZ in particular ran the story prominently, which is notable because TMZ doesn't cover K-pop unless it's genuinely newsworthy by American tabloid standards. For a member who had built his entire brand on being brutally honest about his struggles, the DUI incident added a complicated layer. American fans debated it intensely. Was it a serious offense that warranted real criticism, or was it a human mistake that was being amplified because of his celebrity? The Korean legal system treated it as a misdemeanor. He paid his fine, and life moved on. But in America, where DUI incidents have ended careers and where the conversation around drinking and driving carries enormous cultural weight, it lingered longer than Suga probably expected. Still, and this is important, neither of these incidents destroyed Suga's reputation in America. His 2023 solo album, D-Day, and the subsequent world tour, including sold-out American dates, proved that the fanbase remained fiercely loyal. American critics reviewed the album positively. His Coachella-adjacent appearances generated buzz. The man's talent, ultimately, outweighed his controversies. But the Jim Jones sample remains one of the most culturally significant missteps in BTS's entire American journey, not because it was malicious, but because it revealed the dangerous gap between global ambition and local sensitivity. And that's a lesson that echoes far beyond K-pop. So Suga sits at number 6. Not the cleanest record, not the dirtiest, but a record that carries a uniquely American weight that most international fans will never fully grasp. But hold on tight, ARMY, because the member coming in at number 5, their American scandal didn't involve a sample or a scooter. It involved something you could see with your own eyes, broadcast on live television, and it set off an international diplomatic firestorm. You're not ready. Number 5. V. The most private soul whose love life was exposed on American soil, and he couldn't stop it. If Suga's American scandal was about a historical miscalculation, then what happened to Kim Taehyung V was something entirely different. Something more personal, more invasive, more painful to watch unfold in real time. Because V didn't create his scandal. He didn't make a production mistake. He didn't sample the wrong audio or say the wrong thing in an interview. No, V's biggest American scandal was done to him. His private life was ripped open, spread across every American tabloid, gossip site, and social media platform on the planet. And he had to stand there and watch it happen while millions of people debated the most intimate details of his existence like it was entertainment. And that, ARMY, is what makes this one hit different. Let's set the stage first, because you need to understand who V was in the American landscape before everything exploded. Out of all 7 BTS members, V had a uniquely cinematic presence in America. He wasn't just a pop star, he was a vibe, a mood, an aesthetic. When BTS walked red carpets in Los Angeles, New York, or Las Vegas, cameras naturally gravitated toward Taehyung. His fashion choices were dissected by Vogue, GQ, and Harper's Bazaar. His face was analyzed by plastic surgeons on YouTube who couldn't stop talking about his bone structure. His deep baritone voice became ASMR content for millions of American fans who'd never even listened to a BTS song. At American award shows, V was a magnet, and not just for fans. Celebrities themselves seemed drawn to him. Remember the 2022 Grammy Awards? April 3rd, 2022, MGM Grand Garden Arena, Las Vegas. BTS performed Butter, V sang, he danced, he commanded the stage. But what went viral in America that night wasn't the performance. It was what happened OFF stage. Cameras caught V interacting with Olivia Rodrigo. A brief moment. A smile. A casual exchange. And within minutes, American Twitter turned it into a full narrative. Are they flirting? Did you see the way she looked at him? V and Olivia Rodrigo is the crossover we didn't know we needed. Entertainment Tonight ran a segment. News posted about it. TikTok edits of the interaction racked up tens of millions of views. And here's what's wild, it was nothing. A polite interaction between two artists at an industry event. But because it was V, because of his face, his energy, his mysterious aura, America turned 30 seconds of casual conversation into a week-long news cycle. That moment, as trivial as it was, foreshadowed what was coming because it proved that America was obsessed with V's love life. The public didn't just want his music. They wanted to know who Kim Taehyung loved. And a few months later, they got their answer in the worst possible way. August 2022. The first leaked photo drops on social media. It appears to show V and Jennie Kim of Blackpink together. In a car. Looking intimate. And the internet, specifically the American internet, detonates. Now, let's be crystal clear about the magnitude of what just happened. This wasn't two random idols being spotted at a coffee shop. This was a member of BTS and a member of Blackpink, the two biggest K-pop groups in history, allegedly dating. In American entertainment terms, this was the equivalent of Justin Timberlake and Beyoncé being caught together in 2003. The cultural shockwave was seismic. TMZ picked it up. Page 6 ran it. News, Access Hollywood, Entertainment Tonight. Every single American celebrity news outlet that had spent years ignoring K-pop was suddenly very interested. The photos spread faster than either fandom could process. And then more photos leaked. And more. Over the following weeks and months, batches of private images allegedly showing V and Jennie together in various locations surfaced online with disturbing regularity. Some appeared to be taken from personal devices. Some looked like they were screenshots from private social media accounts. The implication was horrifying. Someone had hacked into V's phone, or Jennie's, or both, and was systematically releasing their private moments to the public. American armies and blinks were at war. Accusations flew in every direction. Some army accounts claimed the photos were fabricated, edited, deepfaked. Some blink accounts accused army of victim-blaming Jennie. Some fans on both sides doxed and harassed alleged leakers. The toxicity was astronomical, and it played out primarily on American platforms, Twitter, Reddit, TikTok, Instagram, where the majority of international K-pop discourse happens. American tech journalists started writing about the cybersecurity implications. Wired ran analysis pieces about celebrity phone hacking. Mashable covered the digital privacy angle. The conversation expanded beyond K-pop gossip into a genuine discussion about the vulnerability of public figures in the digital age, and V was at the center of it, not by choice, but by violation. What made this uniquely devastating for V was his well-known desire for privacy. Among all BTS members, Taehyung had always been the most protective of his personal life. He rarely discussed relationships. He kept his family out of the spotlight. His social media presence, while active, was curated and artistic, not confessional. He built walls, carefully and deliberately, to protect the parts of himself that didn't belong to the public. And those walls were demolished overnight by a faceless hacker with an internet connection. Hybe and YG Entertainment, the agencies representing V and Jennie respectively, initially declined to comment, which, in the American media landscape, was interpreted as either confirmation or cowardice, depending on who you asked. American entertainment journalists, accustomed to quick PR responses from Western celebrities, were baffled by the Korean agency's silence. Op-eds were written about the cultural differences in celebrity PR between Korea and America. Eventually, both agencies acknowledged the relationship, but by then, the damage was catastrophic, not to V's popularity, which remained enormous, but to his sense of safety. The man who valued his privacy more than any other member of BTS had his most private moments consumed by millions of strangers across the American internet like popcorn at a movie theater. And here's the part that doesn't get discussed enough. The American legal infrastructure offered V almost no protection. In the United States, celebrity privacy laws are notoriously weak. The First Amendment protections that American media enjoys mean that once private photos enter the public domain, removing them is nearly impossible. Revenge porn laws vary by state. International victims of hacking face jurisdictional nightmares. These leaked photos were hosted on American servers, shared on American platforms, and discussed by American media outlets, and there was almost nothing he could legally do about it from Seoul. The scandal lingered for months in the American press. Every time V appeared at a fashion show, an airport, or a public event, American paparazzi and fan sites scrutinized who was near him, who he texted, where he looked. His attendance at Celine fashion shows in Paris, covered extensively by American fashion media, was analyzed not for his style, but for potential clues about his relationship status. The art of his public life was reduced to detective work about his private one. Even when V enlisted in the military in December 2023, American outlets like CNN and the Associated Press mentioned the Jenny relationship in their coverage, as if it were an essential biographical detail rather than a private matter that was never meant to be public. The relationship, the leak, the invasion, it had become permanently embedded in V's American media narrative. So V sits at number 5. Not because he did anything scandalous. Not because he made a mistake. But because America's insatiable appetite for celebrity intimacy, combined with the lawless frontier of digital privacy, turned the most private member of BTS into the most publicly exposed. His scandal wasn't a choice, it was a crime committed against him that the American media ecosystem then profited from without consequence. And if that doesn't make you uncomfortable, Army, it should. But take a breath, because the member waiting at number 4? Their American scandal wasn't about leaked photos or production samples. It was about a single piece of clothing that ignited an international political firestorm and nearly got BTS banned from an entire country. You're absolutely not ready for this one. Number 4. Jungkook. The golden magne who shattered his innocent image on American primetime, and America couldn't look away. Alright, Army, buckle up because this one is going to sting. Number 4 belongs to the member who is supposed to be untouchable. The prodigy. The one who could sing, dance, produce, direct, paint, film, and do basically everything at a level that made grown professionals jealous. Jungkook. The golden magne. The baby of BTS who debuted at 15 years old with eyes full of dreams and a face so pure that fans collectively decided to protect him like he was their own little brother. America fell in love with Jungkook early and fell hard. He was the one non-fans could point to and immediately understand the appeal. The vocals, the visuals, the athleticism, the shy smile that somehow communicated more charisma than most Western pop stars could manufacture in an entire career. When BTS performed on American stages, the AMAs, the Grammys, the VMAs, Good Morning America, The Tonight Show, Jungkook was consistently the one the cameras lingered on. American producers and choreographers who worked with BTS would go on record saying Jungkook's work ethic was unlike anything they'd ever seen. He was perfect. And perfection, as America loves to prove over and over again, is a target. The first major crack in Jungkook's American armor came in April 2020, and the timing couldn't have been worse. The entire world was locked down. COVID-19 was killing thousands of Americans every single day. New York City was a ghost town. Hospitals were overflowing. The American public was traumatized, terrified, and furious at anyone who wasn't taking the pandemic seriously. And right in the middle of that global nightmare, news broke out of South Korea. Jungkook had visited restaurants and bars in Seoul's Itaewon district in late April, right before a massive COVID-19 cluster was traced back to that exact neighborhood. The Korean media reported it first, but American outlets grabbed it within hours. CNN covered it. NBC covered it. The New York Times mentioned it in their broader coverage of South Korea's COVID response. For context, South Korea had been held up by American media as a model for pandemic management, a sharp contrast to America's chaotic response under the Trump administration. So when a member of the country's most famous cultural export was caught potentially violating social distancing norms, it wasn't just gossip. It was a narrative disruption. American journalists who had praised South Korea's discipline were now writing about a BTS member going out during a pandemic. The headlines were brutal. BTS's Jungkook visited Itaewon clubs before COVID-19 outbreak. Every word in that sentence was designed to maximize damage. Jungkook apologized. Big Hit confirmed he had visited the area but clarified that his visit occurred before the government's official social distancing guidelines were tightened and before the cluster was identified. He tested negative for COVID-19. Technically, he hadn't broken any laws. But in the court of American public opinion, where people were burying family members and couldn't even attend funerals, technically legal, wasn't good enough. American armies who had spent years defending Jungkook from every criticism suddenly found themselves struggling. How do you defend your idol going out during a pandemic when your own grandmother is on a ventilator? The cognitive dissonance was brutal. Anti-fans and K-pop rival fandoms amplified the story relentlessly on American platforms. The hashtag trended. Memes were made. Op-eds were written. For the first time, Jungkook's name appeared in American news for something unambiguously negative, and no amount of streaming goals or fan projects could undo that. But Army, if you thought the Itaewon incident was where Jungkook's American scandal story ended, you haven't been paying attention. Because what came next, starting in 2023, was a complete reinvention that left America simultaneously obsessed and scandalized. July 14, 2023. Jungkook drops 7 featuring American rapper Latto. And from the very first listen, it's clear, this is not the Jungkook that America met at the 2017 Billboard Music Awards. The explicit version of 7 contains lyrics that are, by any standard, sexually charged. Lines about wanting someone all day, all night, with implications that leave absolutely nothing to the imagination. The music video features Jungkook in scenarios that are playful but unmistakably adult, a far cry from the doe-eyed boy who used to hide behind his hyungs during American interviews. American media didn't know how to process it. Billboard ran analysis pieces about Jungkook's mature transformation. Rolling Stone discussed the strategic calculation behind releasing an explicit track as a first solo single. TikTok exploded with reaction videos from American fans who were genuinely shocked, some delighted, others uncomfortable, by the Mogne's new direction. And then 3D dropped in October 2023 featuring Jack Harlow, and whatever was left of Jungkook's innocent American image was obliterated completely. The lyrics were even more explicit. Jack Harlow's verse was unapologetically sexual. The concept was adult. The aesthetic was grown. American radio stations played it. American clubs played it. And American parents who had let their 12-year-olds stan Jungkook for years were suddenly realizing that their kid's favorite idol was making music they wouldn't want playing at a family dinner. The scandal here wasn't that Jungkook made adult music. American artists do it every day. The scandal was the whiplash. The gap between who America thought Jungkook was and who Jungkook revealed himself to be was so vast that it created its own controversy. Think about it. Justin Bieber went through a similar transformation, but it happened gradually over years. Jungkook essentially did it in one summer. American entertainment journalists compared it to Disney Channel stars going rogue, Miley Cyrus, Selena Gomez, Demi Lovato, all of whom underwent public transformations that were met with equal parts fascination and moral panic. But there was an added layer with Jungkook that those comparisons missed. He was a Korean artist operating in America, which meant he was subject to both American and Korean moral standards simultaneously. American fans debated his lyrics on Twitter. Korean netizens debated his image on Naver. He was being judged by two cultural frameworks at once, and the friction between those frameworks generated an enormous amount of American media coverage. Add to this the tattoo artist controversy that had already simmered in American K-pop spaces for years, Jungkook's extensive tattoos, his rumored relationship with his tattoo artist Lee Mi-ju, the paparazzi-style photos of her near his apartment that circulated on American fan forums and K-pop Reddit threads, and you have a pattern. Every few months, Jungkook's name was trending in America for something that had nothing to do with music. There were also the drinking live streams. Jungkook went live on Weverse multiple times while clearly intoxicated, chatting with fans, singing, being emotional. Clips from these streams went viral on American TikTok and Twitter. Some fans found it endearing. He's just being real. He's just being human. Others were concerned. He's drinking alone on camera in front of millions of young fans. This isn't healthy. American mental health advocates weighed in. Articles were written about the parasocial implications of idols broadcasting their drinking habits to underage audiences. It was a uniquely modern scandal, not illegal, not immoral in isolation, but deeply uncomfortable when examined through America's complicated relationship with alcohol, celebrity, and the duty of public figures to their young fan base. And yet, through all of this, Jungkook remained one of the most commercially successful solo artists in America. 7 debuted at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, making him the first Korean solo artist to achieve that milestone. 3D charted strongly. His album, Golden, sold millions. His Times Square TSX performance drew thousands of fans who camped out for days in the heart of Manhattan. America couldn't quit Jungkook even when it was scandalized by him. That paradox, the simultaneous desire to consume and criticize, is the most American thing about Jungkook's entire story. He gave America exactly what it rewards: sex appeal, confidence, boundary-pushing artistry, and America rewarded him with exactly what it gives in return: success wrapped in scandal, fame wrapped in judgment. So number 4 belongs to the golden magnate who proved that growing up in public, on American soil, under American scrutiny, comes with a price tag that no amount of platinum records can cover. But don't even think about relaxing, ARMY, because the member at number 3? Their scandal didn't just make American headlines, it made international political headlines. It involved a piece of fabric, a historical wound, and a diplomatic crisis that threatened to erase BTS from one of the world's biggest media markets overnight. This next one is heavy. Number 3, Jimin, the angel-faced idol whose t-shirt nearly destroyed BTS's entire career and dragged America into a diplomatic war. ARMY, take a deep breath. Because what you're about to read isn't just a scandal, it's a geopolitical earthquake disguised as a wardrobe choice. Number 3 belongs to Park Jimin, the dancer with the ethereal voice. The performer whose stage presence has been described by American choreographers as once in a generation. The member who consistently tops brand reputation rankings, whose solo tracks melt hearts, whose I Smile has launched 1,000 fan accounts. Jimin is beloved. Genuinely, deeply, almost universally beloved. In Korea, in America, everywhere. And that's exactly what made this scandal so devastating. Because when Jimin's controversy hit, it didn't just trend on Twitter for a day and disappear. It spiraled into an international diplomatic crisis involving 3 nations, South Korea, Japan, and the United States of America, and for a terrifying moment, it looked like it might actually end BTS. Not slow them down. Not embarrass them. Yendi them. Let's go back to the fall of 2018. BTS is at the absolute peak of their American ascent. They've just spoken at the United Nations General Assembly in September. Their album, Love Yourself, Answer, has debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200. They've sold out Citi Field in New York, the first Korean act to headline an American stadium. American late-night hosts are fighting to book them. They're on the cover of Time magazine's Next Generation Leaders issue. Every single metric says the same thing: BTS is unstoppable. And then, in November 2018, a photo resurfaces. It's Jimin. He's wearing a t-shirt. And that t-shirt is about to blow up the world. The shirt in question features two images. On one side, a photograph of Korean citizens celebrating liberation from Japanese colonial rule on August 15, 1945. On the other side, and this is where everything falls apart, a photograph of a mushroom cloud. The atomic bomb. The very weapon that the United States dropped on Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, and Nagasaki on August 9, 1945, killing an estimated 200,000 people, the vast majority of them civilians. Women, children, elderly. Entire families vaporized in a fraction of a second. The text on the shirt reads, "Patriotism, our history, liberation, and Korea." The shirt was designed by a Korean brand as a patriotic statement, celebrating the end of Japan's 35-year brutal colonial occupation of Korea, which ended when Japan surrendered after the bombings. In Korean historical context, the atomic bombs are inextricably linked to liberation. August 15, 1945, is Korea's Independence Day specifically because Japan's surrender followed the bombings. For many Koreans, the mushroom cloud isn't a symbol of death, it's a symbol of freedom. But in Japan? In America? That image carries an entirely different weight. Jimin reportedly wore the shirt during a casual moment, possibly during a behind-the-scenes shoot months earlier. The photo had circulated among fans without much attention. But in November 2018, as BTS was scheduled to appear on Japan's biggest music show, TV Asahi's music station, Japanese netizens found the photo and detonated it across Japanese social media. The reaction in Japan was volcanic. Japanese citizens were outraged. Hibakusha survivors, the still living victims of the atomic bombings, expressed pain. Japanese politicians weighed in. The national conversation turned hostile toward BTS overnight. TV Asahi canceled BTS's appearance on music station. And then, and this is where America enters the story in the most explosive way possible, the Simon Wiesenthal Center got involved. The Simon Wiesenthal Center, headquartered in Los Angeles, California, is one of the most influential Jewish human rights organizations in the world. Named after the Holocaust survivor who spent his life hunting Nazi war criminals, the center monitors anti-Semitism, extremism, and historical insensitivity globally. And they didn't just comment on Jimin's shirt, they opened up an entirely new front in the scandal. In their official statement, the Simon Wiesenthal Center condemned not only the atomic bomb t-shirt, but also referenced past BTS-related imagery that they found deeply troubling. They pointed to a photoshoot in which a BTS member had worn a hat featuring what appeared to be a Nazi SS death head symbol. They referenced concert stages and music video imagery that bore resemblance to Nazi-era aesthetics. And they demanded a formal apology, not from Jimin alone, but from the entire group and their management. This was no longer a K-pop scandal. This was now a story about the Holocaust, the atomic bombings, World War II, colonialism, and the responsibilities of global artists to understand the historical weight of the symbols they display. And it was playing out on American soil, in American media, driven by an American organization. CNN ran multiple segments. The New York Times published an in-depth analysis. The Washington Post covered it. NPR discussed it. Fox News covered it. The story was inescapable in America for weeks. American commentators were divided in ways that reflected America's own complicated relationship with the atomic bombings. Some argued that celebrating the bombings, even indirectly, was morally indefensible because of the civilian death toll. Others argued that without the bombings, the Pacific War would have continued and millions more would have died. Some Americans pointed out the hypocrisy of a country that dropped the bombs, criticizing anyone for acknowledging their historical consequence. The debate transcended BTS entirely and became a referendum on how nations remember war, who gets to define victimhood, and whether a 25-year-old pop star from Busan should be held responsible for navigating centuries of geopolitical trauma through his clothing choices. Big Hit Entertainment issued a comprehensive apology in November 2018. The statement was carefully crafted and specifically addressed the concerns raised by the Simon Wiesenthal Center. It expressed deep regret for the pain caused, acknowledged that the group and company had failed to exercise proper oversight over the imagery associated with their brand, and affirmed BTS's commitment to promoting respect and understanding across cultures. Crucially, representatives from Big Hit reportedly met with members of the Simon Wiesenthal Center to personally apologize and discuss the situation. The center accepted the apology and praised the group for their willingness to learn and grow. But the scars remained, particularly in America, where the scandal had permanently complicated BTS's narrative. Before the t-shirt controversy, BTS's American story was a fairy tale, 7 boys from Korea who conquered the world through talent and hard work. After the controversy, that story had an asterisk. American journalists who profiled BTS going forward would reference the incident. Think pieces about cultural sensitivity in the age of globalization cited Jimin's shirt. University courses on cross-cultural communication used the scandal as a case study. The incident didn't end Jimin's career. It didn't even significantly dent his popularity. Filter, released in 2020, became one of BTS's biggest solo tracks. His 2023 solo album, Face, debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200. Like Crazy reached number 1 on the Hot 100, making him the first Korean solo artist to top the chart. America continued to embrace Jimin the artist even as it remembered Jimin the cautionary tale. But what makes Jimin's scandal sit so firmly at number 3 isn't just the controversy itself, it's the layers. A Korean patriotic shirt, a Japanese colonial wound, an American weapon, an American Jewish organization, 3 countries, 3 historical traumas, 3 perspectives that are all simultaneously valid and irreconcilable. Jimin stood at the intersection of all of them, wearing a t-shirt he probably bought without thinking twice, and became the face of a debate that scholars have been having for 80 years. That's the cruel mathematics of global fame. You don't get to be innocent when you're visible to the whole world. Every choice, even the unconscious ones, gets weighed on the scales of history. And sometimes, the weight is crushing. So ARMY, Jimin sits at number 3. An angel who accidentally walked into a geopolitical minefield. But the member coming up at number 2? Their American scandal wasn't about history or politics. It was about something far more personal. Something that happened right in the spotlight of American pop culture, questioned their artistry, challenged their identity, and forced them to answer a question no BTS member had ever been asked so directly on American soil. You need to hear this one. Number 2, J-Hope, the sunshine soldier who walked into America's most sacred stage and was told he didn't belong. ARMY, let's be honest with each other for a second. If you're reading this list and you see J-Hope sitting at number 2, your brain is probably short-circuiting right now. Young Hoseok? The sun? The hope? The man whose entire brand is built on positivity, energy, and making people smile? The guy who screams, "I'm your hope, you're my hope, I'm J-Hope," with so much sincerity that it actually works every single time? This J-Hope has the second most scandals in America? And the answer, ARMY, is more complicated and more painful than you might expect. Because J-Hope's American scandal story isn't about something he did wrong. It's about what America did to him. It's about the ugliest side of the American music industry revealing itself the moment a Korean artist had the audacity, the absolute nerve, to step onto a stage that America had decided belonged to someone else. And what happened exposed a kind of racism, gatekeeping, and cultural hostility that the K-pop world had been quietly enduring for years, but had never been forced to confront so publicly, so loudly, and so painfully as it did with Young Hoseok in the summer of 2022. Let's rewind to the announcement. Early 2022, Hybe confirms that J-Hope will headline Lollapalooza in Chicago on July 31st. Read that sentence again. Headline. Not open. Not perform mid-afternoon on a side stage. Headline. The main stage. The closing slot on the final night. The slot that has been held by Metallica, The Strokes, The Killers, Foo Fighters, Chance the Rapper, Radiohead, Eminem, artists who represent the absolute pinnacle of American musical credibility. and now it belongs to a K-pop idol. The significance cannot be overstated. J-Hope would become the first South Korean artist in history to headline a major American music festival. Not just Lollapalooza, any major American festival. Coachella hadn't done it. Bonnaroo hadn't done it. Governor's Ball, Austin City Limits, Outside Lands, none of them. J-Hope was about to break a barrier that no Asian artist had broken before in the American festival landscape, and the weight of that moment was enormous. And America's reaction? Parts of it were beautiful. Armies mobilized. Korean American fans cried with pride. Asian American communities celebrated. The representation mattered. But other parts of America's reaction were absolutely vile. The moment the headline slot was announced, American music Twitter erupted with a hostility that went far beyond normal criticism. Who? Why is a K-pop guy headlining MY Festival? Lollapalooza sold out to BTS money. This is a rock festival, not a fan meeting. He doesn't even sing in English. How is this a headline act? Comment sections on music blogs and Reddit threads dedicated to Lollapalooza became cesspools of barely disguised xenophobia. American music journalists, some of them from publications that should have known better, wrote pieces questioning the booking. The subtext was always the same, even when the language was carefully sanitized for print. A Korean artist doesn't deserve this stage. The accusation that Hybe had essentially bought the headline slot circulated widely on American music forums. The implication was that J-Hope hadn't earned this through artistry, but through corporate checkbook diplomacy. No evidence was ever presented to support this claim, but it didn't need evidence. It ran on the fuel of American cultural protectionism. The idea that an Asian artist could headline Lollapalooza on merit was, for a disturbingly large segment of the American music audience, simply unthinkable. And here's where the racial dimension becomes impossible to ignore. When Travis Scott headlined. When Bad Bunny performed in Spanish. When Daft Punk played without showing their faces. When The Weeknd headlined after years of being considered an alternative R&B artist. None of those bookings generated this level of hostility. The gatekeeping that J-Hope faced was specific to his identity as an Asian artist in a historically white American festival space, and pretending otherwise is intellectually dishonest. American armies who attended Lollapalooza 2022 reported encountering other festival goers who openly mocked them for being there to see J-Hope. Some fans shared stories on TikTok and Twitter about being told to go back to your K-pop concert by other attendees. The atmosphere, for many, was hostile before J-Hope even took the stage. And then he took the stage. July 31st, 2022. Grant Park, Chicago. And Young Hoseok did what Young Hoseok does. He performed like his life depended on it. The setlist drew from Jack in the Box, his solo album that had dropped just weeks earlier, as well as his BTS catalog and his iconic mixtape, Hope World. He brought Becky G on stage for Chicken Noodle Soup. He brought Jimin as a surprise guest. He danced with a ferocity that silenced every person who had questioned whether he belonged. American music critics who attended, many of whom had been skeptical, wrote glowing reviews. Pitchfork praised the energy. Billboard called it historic. Rolling Stone acknowledged the cultural significance. The crowd, by all accounts, was massive and enthusiastic. J-Hope had answered every question with the only response that mattered, the performance itself. But the damage from the lead-up was already done, and it didn't disappear after the last song. The conversation about whether K-pop artists belong at American music festivals continued for months. American think pieces were written. Panel discussions happened. The intersection of race, genre, nationality, and cultural legitimacy in the American music industry was dissected in ways that were long overdue. J-Hope had become the lightning rod for a debate that was never really about him. It was about America's discomfort with sharing its cultural spaces with Asian artists who were, by every measurable metric, outperforming their American peers. Now rewind a bit further to 2019, because J-Hope's American controversy file has another entry that deserves attention, Chicken Noodle Soup, featuring Becky G, released on September 27, 2019. The track was a reimagining of the 2006 viral hit by Webstar and Young V, a song that was deeply embedded in Black American hip-hop culture, particularly in New York City. The original Chicken Noodle Soup wasn't just a song, it was a dance, a movement, a cultural moment that belonged to Black and Latino communities in Harlem and the Bronx. So when J-Hope, a Korean idol, released his version, featuring a Mexican-American artist, with a music video full of hip-hop and Latin dance styles, the cultural appropriation accusations came fast and furious from American critics. Why is a Korean man profiting off a Black cultural creation? This is gentrification of hip-hop. K-pop takes everything from Black culture and gives nothing back. The debate was fierce on American social media. J-Hope and Becky G's version included multilingual elements, Korean, English, and Spanish, which some praised as inclusive and others criticized as performative multiculturalism. The music video featured dancers of diverse backgrounds, which was either a celebration of global unity or an appropriation of aesthetics, depending on who you asked. What made this controversy uniquely American was that it tapped into the much larger, ongoing conversation about K-pop's debt to Black American music, a conversation that involves the entire genre, not just J-Hope, but one that crystallized around him because of this specific track. American journalists and cultural commentators had been raising this issue for years, and Chicken Noodle Soup became a case study that was referenced in academic papers, magazine features, and YouTube video essays about cultural exchange versus cultural theft. J-Hope never publicly addressed the appropriation accusations in detail, and neither did Hybe, which frustrated American critics who felt that K-pop's relationship with Black culture demanded a direct conversation rather than corporate silence. The song was a commercial success. It charted on the Hot 100. The music video surpassed hundreds of millions of views, but the controversy attached to it never fully resolved. It became part of J-Hope's American legacy in a way that was permanent and uncomfortable. And then there was the quieter but no less significant controversy around Jack in the Box itself, J-Hope's 2022 solo album that preceded Lollapalooza. American music critics received it with polarized reviews. The album was dark, experimental, heavily influenced by grunge, old-school hip-hop, and rock, a radical departure from J-Hope's bright, colorful BTS persona. Some American reviewers praised the artistic risk. Others were brutal, suggesting that J-Hope was cosplaying musical authenticity, that the album felt like a calculated attempt to earn credibility with American music purists rather than a genuine artistic evolution. Those critiques stung because they carried an implicit bias, the assumption that a K-pop artist pursuing darker, more serious music was inherently performative, while an American artist doing the same would be praised for artistic growth. Number 1, RM. The leader who carried BTS into America on his back, and America made him pay for every single step. So here we are, ARMY. The final name. The number 1 spot. And if your jaw isn't already on the floor, let me spell it out for you. The BTS member with the most scandals in America is not the magnate who went clubbing during COVID. Not the producer who sampled a cult leader's sermon. Not the dancer whose t-shirt nearly caused a diplomatic incident. It's Kim Namjoon, RM, the leader, the genius, the man who taught himself English by watching Friends, the man who stood at the podium of the United Nations General Assembly and told the youth of the world to speak themselves, the man who American interviewers called the voice of a generation, the man who translated not just language but an entire culture for the Western world so that 6 other members could shine on American soil. RM didn't just bring BTS to America, he was BTS in America for years. He was the one who answered every question in English on every American talk show. He was the one who sat across from Ellen DeGeneres, Jimmy Fallon, James Corden, and Stephen Colbert and carried the weight of representing an entire nation's pop culture export while his members sat beside him, trusting him completely. He was the spokesperson, the diplomat, the translator, the shield. And because of that position, because he was the most visible, the most verbal, the most accessible BTS member to the American public, he was also the biggest target. And America took aim at him over and over and over again, from angles that no other BTS member had to face simultaneously. Let's start at the very beginning, because RM's American scandal timeline doesn't begin in 2017 when BTS won their first Billboard award. It begins years earlier, buried in mixtapes and early BTS tracks that most casual American fans have never heard, but that American critics, journalists, and anti-fans have memorized like scripture. Before RM was the eloquent leader who spoke about self-love at the United Nations, he was Rap Monster, a teenage underground rapper from Ilsan, South Korea, who idolized Eminem, Nas, and Kanye West, and who wrote lyrics with the raw, unfiltered aggression that characterized early 2010s Korean hip-hop. And some of those lyrics, ARMY, were deeply problematic by any standard, Korean, American, or otherwise. Early BTS tracks contained lyrics that were misogynistic. Not vaguely. Not arguably. Explicitly. Lines that objectified women, reduced them to physical attributes, and reinforced toxic masculine narratives that would later stand in direct opposition to everything BTS claimed to represent. RM's pre-debut mixtapes and early BTS songs like War of Hormone and certain B-side tracks included language and themes that, when translated into English and presented to American audiences, were indefensible. And American fans found them. Not immediately, but eventually, inevitably, thoroughly. As BTS's American popularity exploded between 2017 and 2019, a parallel cottage industry emerged on American social media, the systematic excavation of BTS's past. Twitter threads with hundreds of thousands of engagements cataloged every problematic lyric, every questionable statement, every uncomfortable moment from BTS's early career. And RM, as the primary lyricist and the leader who set the group's artistic direction in those early years, bore the heaviest burden. American feminist commentators who had initially praised BTS's Love Yourself campaign began asking pointed questions. How does a group whose leader wrote misogynistic lyrics in 2013 get to rebrand as advocates for self-love in 2018? Is this growth or is this marketing? Is RM's evolution genuine or calculated? These questions dominated American K-pop discourse for years, not days, not weeks, years, and they resurfaced every single time BTS achieved a new American milestone. Grammy nomination? Here come the old lyrics. Billboard #1? Here come the old lyrics. UN speech? Here come the old lyrics. The cycle was relentless, and RM could never outrun it because the internet never forgets, and America never forgives without a public reckoning that meets its specific cultural standards. But the misogynistic lyrics were just the first layer. The second layer was even more explosive in the American context because it touched the most sensitive nerve in American cultural discourse, race. During BTS's early eras, multiple members, including RM, wore hairstyles associated with Black American culture. Cornrows, braids, dreadlocks. Styles that carry deep historical, political, and cultural significance in the Black American experience. Styles that represent resistance, identity, and heritage for communities that have been systematically oppressed for centuries. When American fans, particularly Black American armies, who made up a significant and vocal portion of the fandom, raised concerns about cultural appropriation, the conversation became one of the most important and most painful in BTS's American history. And RM was at the center of it. Not just because he had worn the hairstyles, but because he was the one who spoke English. He was the one who could have addressed it directly. He was the one American fans looked to for acknowledgement, accountability, and dialogue. And for a long time, that direct acknowledgement didn't come in a way that satisfied American critics. RM eventually expressed awareness and growth on these issues through interviews and the evolution of BTS's visual presentation. The hairstyles disappeared, the styling changed, the sensitivity clearly increased, but a formal, explicit public statement addressing cultural appropriation in terms that American discourse demanded was never delivered. For many Black American fans, that silence was itself a scandal. They loved BTS's music. They streamed the albums. They bought the tickets. They defended the group against racist attacks from white American media. And in return, they felt that their specific concerns about cultural appropriation were sidestepped, minimized, or absorbed into corporate PR language that lacked genuine accountability. And then there was the N-word. This is the scandal that, more than any other, haunted RM specifically in American spaces. Audio and video clips circulated showing RM apparently mouthing or speaking the N-word, reportedly while singing along to or referencing American hip-hop songs. In Korean hip-hop culture of the early 2010s, the use of the N-word was disturbingly common among artists who consumed American rap without fully understanding, or choosing to understand, the word's violent, dehumanizing history in America. It was treated as hip-hop vocabulary rather than a racial slur born from centuries of slavery, segregation, and systemic brutality. When these clips reached American social media, the reaction from Black American fans and non-fans alike was immediate and unequivocal. The N-word is not debatable in America. There is no context in which a non-Black person using it is acceptable to the vast majority of Black Americans. Period. No exceptions for foreign artists. No exceptions for singing along. No exceptions for cultural ignorance. And RM, as the English-speaking leader who professed deep knowledge of and appreciation for American hip-hop, was held to an even higher standard. The argument that he didn't understand the word's weight fell flat when contrasted with his demonstrated fluency in English and his extensive knowledge of American rap history. American Twitter threads about RM and the N-word accumulated millions of impressions. They were cited in American articles about K-pop and race. They became part of the permanent dossier that American media maintained on BTS's problematic history. Every time RM posted about social justice, every time BTS donated to Black Lives Matter, which they did in June 2020, contributing $1 million, the N-word clips resurfaced as counterargument. How can you donate to BLM when your leader used the N-word? The question was asked so many times it became rhetorical. The leader, the bridge, the voice carried more American scandals than any other member, not because he was the most reckless, but because he was the most visible. Misogynistic lyrics, cultural appropriation, the N-word, Nazi imagery, hypocrisy accusations. Every controversy either started with him or ended at his feet, because that's what leadership means. He was BTS's gift to America and America's punching bag in return. But here's the thing: this list doesn't want you to walk away with the idea that BTS is defined by their scandals. They're not. Not even close. What this list actually reveals is something far more important. It reveals that BTS operated in America at a level of scrutiny that no foreign act had ever faced before. They weren't given the grace period that British bands got during the British invasion. They weren't given the cultural pass that Latin artists received during the reggaeton explosion. They were held to a standard so impossibly high that every misstep, every poorly chosen shirt, every sampled audio clip, every old lyric, every leaked photo was amplified into a crisis. And they survived all of it. Every single member on this list is still standing, still creating, still loved by millions, still selling out stadiums and breaking records. BTS didn't just survive America's scandal machine, they outlasted it. And maybe that's the real headline. Not which member had the most scandals, but the fact that after everything, after every controversy, every headline, every Twitter storm, every think piece, 7 boys from South Korea are still the biggest story in global pop culture. And America, for all its judgment, still can't look away. That army is power. That is legacy. And no scandalist will ever change it.